Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Talkn Tennis. I'm your host, Chris, who will be bringing you Day 2's previews of the United Cup. If this is your first time here, congratulations. You've already made a better decision than most tennis media at this time of year. For the regulars, you know the drill. Informed opinions and zero interest in playing it safe. For the newcomers, this is where we break things down without the bullshit. We look at who's actually in form, where the pressure sits, and what to watch before the match even starts. Today's episode continues our United Cup daily coverage, focusing on Day 2, team construction, strengths, and weaklings, and the context that actually matters. Before we dig in, we'll look at some of the matches that have already been completed. So, let's look at Sebastian Baez and Jamie Munar. So, I got this one wrong. Let's talk about the opening session in Perth. And man, it was a literal furnace out there. 36 degrees on the court. The ball was flying like a projectile, and we had a classic baseline war between them. Now, I had confidence in Argentina to maybe snag a set, but I didn't think he'd take Munar out in straight sets on a hard court. But the 170-centimetre powerhouse proved me wrong. He played absolutely fabulous tennis. If you look at the stat sheet, there wasn't much daylight between them. But this match was decided by the big points. We saw so many games go to juice, and that's where Baez really showed his teeth. His composure was rock solid. Tactically, he was sound out there. He stayed patient in the long rallies, but he was intentionally pulling Munar out of his comfort zone. He kept directing these short, wide ground strokes to Munar's forehand, opening up the court, and then this was the clincher. He actually came to the net to finish, which was great to see. You don't always see that kind of transition from Baez, but he showed incredible hands at the net to close out those points. Munar fought, but Baez just had that extra gear of confidence today. So Argentina takes the lead 1-0, and Baez looks like he's ready for a big summer. Then we go over to the women's, where Solana Sierra defeated Jessica Buzzas-Monero 6-4, 5-7, 6-0. So if you want to talk about mental toughness and the absolute chaos of tennis momentum, look no further than this clash. Sierra walked away with the win, but man, did she take the senior crowd to get there. The first two sets were a total dogfight. We saw massive momentum shifts where neither player seemed to want to keep a lead. Sierra actually looked like she had this wrapped up in straight sets. She was actually up 5-2 in the second set and cruising, but didn't have the composure to finish. But then the wheels hit a bit of a wobble. Buzzas-Monero showed that Spanish grit we always talk about. She clawed her way back from the brink, rattled off 5 straight games, and snatched the second set 7-5. At that point, you were thinking Sierra is mentally cooked. She had the match in her hands and let it slip. But then the third set happened, and it wasn't just a win, it was a demolition in the third set. Whatever happened in the break between sets, Sierra wiped the slate clean. She came out and handed Buzzas-Monero a bagel, 6-love in the third. Sierra's power from the baseline just became too much. She stopped the unforced errors that let the Spaniard back in during the second, and she absolutely bullied her way to the finish line. The stats show a story of two halves, a messy, nervous battle for the first 2 hours, followed by a total clinical takeover by the Argentine in the third. It's a massive result for Sierra and for Argentina to keep her composure after the second set collapse. Argentina wins a thriller, and Sierra proves she got the reset button that only the top players really have. And that makes Chris 0 from 2 for my predictions. Now, let's go to the preview. So, previewing Day 2 matches, and we see 4 nations go at it. We're starting with Belgium and China. You've got Elise Mertens, who plays like she's allergic to hitting a winner, and Zhu Lin, who plays like she's left the stove on and needs the match to be over in 40 minutes. Then you've got Zhu Berg taking on Zhang Xian, who is currently the only reason Chinese men's tennis isn't a total footnote. Let's be honest. Then we're moving to Australia and Norway. This is where it gets ugly. We're looking at Maya Joint, who's basically been fast-tracked into the spotlight because the Aussie women's game has been looking a bit thin lately. She's taken on Malene Helgo. Next, we go to Perth. We've got Switzerland against France. It's basically the Belinda and Stan show. Switzerland is leaning heavily on Belinda Bencic, who spent 2025 proving she's still a top-tier threat after maternity leave, and Stan Wawrinka is currently on a farewell tour. They're taking on a French team that is the definition of unpredictable. You've got Lilia Genji, a player who can go from tactical genius to hitting the back fence in 3 minutes flat. And Arthur Ringdickneck, 6'5" tower, who really came on the presence last year, who plays like he's trying to serve the ball through the court. It's Swiss precision versus French chaos. Lastly, for day 2, we have the USA and Argentina. This is a total mismatch in styles. Team USA is coming in with Taylor Fritz, who has beaten Sebastian Baez 5 times out of 5. Fritz plays big man tennis, flat, fast, and aggressive. Baez, on the other hand, is 170 centimeters of pure stubbornness. And then you've got Coco Gauff against Solana Sierra. Coco is the end game of tennis right now. She's too fast, too fit, and way too experienced. She's taken on Sierra, a 21-year-old who just pulled off a miracle comeback against Burzas Monero. But going from a Spanish grinder to the world number 3 is like jumping from a kiddie pool into the middle of the Pacific. Argentina is going to fight, but the USA is coming with heavy artillery. So let's move on to Belgium versus China. So Belgium, they're one of those teams that don't scream star power, but when you look closer, they're actually very well constructed for this format. At the top, you've got Zizou Bergs, solid on hard courts, physically reliable, and not the kind of player who gets overwhelmed by the moment. He's not flashy, but he gives you a chance at almost every singles match. Behind him, Kippen Koppenhaus adds depth. Again, not elite, but dependable. Where Belgium really separate themselves is on their women's side. Elise Mertens is a massive asset in this format. She's experienced, composed, and crucially elite in doubles, which matters more here than people think. Now, China. China's setup is much simpler and riskier. Everything revolves around Zhang Xianzhen. If he wins, China are alive. If he doesn't, things unravel very quickly. Behind him are T. Rigale and Wang Aron. They don't offer the same reliability, especially in pressure situations. On the women's side, Zhu Lin is solid but inconsistent, and Yu Exadi lacks experience at this level. The big concern is the mixed doubles. There's no natural pairing here, and that's where ties often swing. With that being said, let's get into the matchups. So, Elise Mertens and Zhu Lin. So, first match on the board for Belgium and China is Elise Mertens and Zhu Lin. If you like watching two people with completely different relationship statuses with the baseline, this is the match for you. It's a classic case of tactical discipline versus total psychological volatility. Let's look at the tape. Elise Mertens is the definition of an all-court player, but let's be real. She's the human equivalent of a tax return. She's predictable, she's a bit boring to watch, but she's incredibly efficient. Because she was the world number 1 in doubles, she understands court geometry better than almost anyone out there. She doesn't have a knockout punch, but she doesn't have a weakness either. Then you have Zhu Lin. Fans call her Zhu Lin's sanity for a reason. When she's on, she's an aggressive baseliner who hits the ball flatter than a pancake. She wants to take your time away, hit the lines, and get off the court in 40 minutes. But that high-risk style is a double-edged sword for obvious reasons. So, here's where the match is actually won. Mertens is going to sit there with that blank, I'm just doing my job expression, while Zhu Lin is swinging away. When things go south for Zhu, she doesn't just lose, she implodes. Mertens is a master at changing the height and the spin of the ball. She's just going to loop it, slice it, and break Zhu's rhythm until Zhu starts seeing stars. Unless Zhu finds that rare insanity mode where every flat ball miraculously stays in, good luck, because it's going to be very hot and those balls are going to be flying. But she's going to end up hitting 40 unforced errors, and Mertens watches calmly from the other side. The verdict? Well, take my verdicts with a grain of salt, but who doesn't love a comeback? The history tells us here Mertens leads the head-to-head 3-1. Because Mertens eats flat hitters for breakfast, she prevents Zhu from finding that comfortable flat rhythm she craves. I'm taking the Belgian. Mertens is a professional and treats every point like a business transaction. Zhu is a gambler who usually goes broke by the second set, so let's expect Mertens to win this in straight sets, unless the sanity kicks in early for Zhu. So, let's move on now. We've got the men's singles, and honestly, this might be the most important theatrical match of the day. It's Zizou Bergs versus Zhang Xianzhen. If you like fist pumps, screaming at the play boxes, and massive serves, grab a drink. This one's going to be loud. So, let's talk about Zizou Bergs. The guy has the ultimate main character energy. He spends half his year grinding through qualifying draws, yet he acts like he's won 10 slams every time he holds serves. He's all emotion. He's pumping his fists, he's barking at his coach, and he's playing every point like his life depends on it. He's currently sitting at a career high rank around number 42 in the world, and he's basically built for the United Cup because he feeds off the noise. Then you've got Zhang Xianzhen. On paper, he's a beast. He's 6'4". He's got a serve that sounds like a gunshot and a forehand that can punch a hole through a brick wall. But let's be real about Zhang. His mental fortitude is about as strong as Nick Kyrgios's. He's had a nightmare 2025 with shoulder injuries, and his ranking has absolutely tanked because he can't seem to stay on the court for more than 3 matches in a row. Now, why does Zizou Bergs own this matchup? He leads a head-to-head of 3-1. Most recently, in 2025, they played at Marseille, where Zhang actually had to retire. There was actually even a rumour that going around that Bergs accidentally vaulted into Zhang in the tunnel during an over-exuberant warm-up routine. If that's true, that's the most Zizou thing ever, winning a match by accidentally tackling your opponent before the first ball is hit. Tactically, Bergs loves the pace that Zhang provides. Zhang hits a heavy ball and Bergs is fast enough to just sit back, redirect that power and wait for Zhang to get frustrated. Zhang wants a short point. Bergs wants a war. And at 40-degree heat, you're always going to bet on the guy who wants the war. Ultimately, I'm going with Zizou Bergs here, not because he's a significantly better tennis player, but because he's significantly more annoying to play against. He's going to get under Zhang's skin early, and he's going to scream after every unforced error Zhang makes, and Zhang is likely to fold under pressure and trying to save China's tournament single-handedly. So I'm taking Bergs in a tight 2-setter. Expect at least one tie-break where Zhang misses a sitter and Bergs celebrates like he's just won the World Cup. All right. I want to talk about Australia now. So Australia might be one of the most united cup-friendly teams in the tournament. It starts with Alex de Minaur. Relentless, consistent, arguably perfect for a team environment. You'll know exactly what you're getting every time he steps on the court. But the real advantage is depth for Australia. You've got Jason Kubler, solid, he's experienced, battle-tested. John Patrick Smith, excellent doubles instincts. Storm Hunter, a huge mixed doubles weapon. And then you've got Madison Inglis and Maya Joint, which give flexibility on the women's side. Australia doesn't need everything to go perfectly. They just need to stay competitive, and their double strengths can close ties out. Now, we have Norway. Norway's story is very straightforward. If Casper Ruud wins, Norway stay relevant. If he doesn't, it gets uncomfortable fast. Behind him, you've got Viktor Durasovic. Lacks consistency at this level. And on the women's side, Malene Heglo, Astrid Brun Olsen, and, this is a mouthful, Ulrik Ekeri. They're facing an uphill battle against deeper teams. Ekeri helps in doubles, but it's still a narrow path to winning ties. This is what makes the United Cup such a great format. It's not just about your best player, it's about the balanced depth and who can hold their nerve when the tie comes down to doubles. With that in mind, let's get into the actual matchups between Australia and Norway. So we're talking about the home team now, Australia versus Norway. We've got the green and gold looking to make a statement, and they're facing a Norwegian squad that's basically a one-man wrecking crew led by Casper. Let's break down how these teams stack up. So let's look at Maya Joint. At 19 years old, she's already playing with the I'm better than you swagger. And honestly, she has every right to. She's ranked number 32 in the world, and she's got Red Bull sponsorship, and she spent 2025 winning titles on multiple surfaces. She's fast, she's aggressive, and she has that Aussie grit that makes her a nightmare to play in front of a home crowd. Then there's Malene Helgo. Let's be real. Helgo is a career ITF player ranked outside the top 500. Yes, you heard that right, 500. She isn't here because she earned a spot through the rankings. She's here because Norway literally doesn't have any other woman to play. She's the person you bring along to carry the bags and book the practice courts, not the person you expect to take down a top 40 player in Sydney. But hey, wouldn't it be a massive shock if she gets her first win against the Aussie local? Stylistically, this is a mess for Norway. Maya Joint hits a heavy modern ball. She's going to step inside the court and dictate every single point. She has the weapons to blow Helgo off the court in 20 minutes if she's dialed in. Helgo is a grinder. She's solid, she's fit, and she'll run until she collapses, but she has absolutely zero weapons to hurt someone of Maya's caliber. She's historically struggled in this format. Her United Cup record is a depressing 0-7. This is a match about expectations. For Maya Joint, anything less than a blowout is a disappointment. If she doesn't win this in under an hour, she probably should reconsider her seeding for the Australian Open. My recommendation is Maya Joint in straight sets. I'm probably expecting something like a 6-2, 6-3, and Aussies take the lead 1-0, and Helgo moves to 0-8. Now, this is the main event. The Demon, or as now recently he likes to be called, the Disruptor versus the Iceman. Alex de Minaur against Casper Ruud. These two are basically the same age, both 26, and they know each other's game inside out. Their head-to-head is dead even at 1-1 in official ATP matches. But here's the juicy bit. de Minaur actually beat Ruud a few weeks ago in the UTS London final in December 2025. But, hey, look, we all know those UTS matches don't mean much on paper. De Minaur is the fastest man in tennis, period. If you disagree with me, then let me know all about it next and we can get into a heated discussion. So, de Minaur has turned his defense into a weapon, and under Hewitt's coaching, he's become way more aggressive. Caspar is a clay specialist who learnt to love hard courts, but as we know, his recent form isn't great. So we'll see if he can get a top 10 scalp and start off his 2026 campaign. On a side note about Caspar, I've also come across a picture of him with a septum ring, and for those that don't know, a septum ring is a type of nose ring, but more wankerish. It's probably worth checking out. Regardless, he has a topspin heavy forehand, and he'll use that to dictate play and work Alex side to side. But Alex won't mind that, as he's been doing that to pay his bills for many years. So this is going to be a long match with long rallies. Neither player will blast the other off the court with power, despite de Minaur making the claim he'll be more powerful and more aggressive. Ruud will try to overpower de Minaur, and Alex will try to make Caspar play just one more ball until he snaps. Given the home court advantage and the recent win in London, I think the momentum is with the Aussie. My recommendation is that Alex de Minaur to win the straight sets with a break of serve on Caspar's first service game. Alex will start off strong. So, we're staying in Perth now for Group C, where we're looking at France versus Switzerland. So this is the ultimate generational tie. You've got a Swiss team that feels like a victory lap for two legends, and you've got a French squad that is essentially trying to play spoiler with some heavy hitters. Switzerland is the feel-good story of the tournament. They are led by Stan Wawrinka, who has officially announced that 2026 will be his final year on the tour. He's the playing captain, and you know he wants to start his last dance with a trophy. But the real engine of this team is Belinda Bencic. She was the 2025 Comeback Player of the Year for a reason. She returned from maternity leave and rocketed from outside the top 400 back to number 11 in the world. This team is nostalgic. They're emotional, and with Bencic playing top 10 tennis again, they're a massive threat to move out of the group stage. France is coming in with a very different energy. They don't have a flashy top 5 superstar, but they have an incredible depth and a bit of a giant killer DNA. They're led by Arthur Rindiknecht, who's sitting at a career-high ranking of 29. He's a giant, a 6'5" powerhouse who actually stunned Alexander Zverev at Wimbledon last year, so he's not afraid to get on the big stage. The interesting thing about France this year is the mix of youth and experience. They've got the savvy veteran Eduardo Roger-Vesselin for the doubles, and while they might not be the favourites on paper, they're actually the kind of team that ruins a bigger nation's day by being too solid to beat themselves. So first up, Lila Janjin against the returning Belinda Bencic. So Janjin is a bit of a trickster. She has variety and a great slice, but let's be real, she's outmatched here. She's facing a Bencic who's on a mission. Bencic finished 2025 on a tear after her maternity leave, climbing from outside the top 400 back to the number 11 in the world. Bencic is the hardcourt specialist. She takes the ball early, so it's suffocating. Janjin thrives when she has time to be creative, but Bencic isn't going to give her a second to breathe. Unless Bencic has some early season rust, this should be a clinical display. So Bencic in straight sets for me. Then we move on to the men's side. We've got Rindiknecht against the legend himself, Stan the Man. This is part of Stan's final chapter. He's announced that this year is his last year. So the motion in the stadium is going to be heavy. At 40 years old, he's still got that thunderous one-hand backhand. But the question is always the legs. Rindiknecht, 6'5", massive serve, and currently ranked much higher, 29 in the world. He's going to try to serve Stan off the court and keep the points short. The call, Stan is the sentimental favourite, but Rindiknecht's serve on these fast Perth courts is a nightmare for an older player, particularly for their movement. Rindiknecht likes shorter points, and it will suit Wawrinka for obvious reasons. I'm going to go against the grain here. I'm going for Wawrinka in a tight two-setter, and we should see a tiebreaker. Now for Group A, the defending champions, Team USA taking on Argentina. This is the definition of firepower versus grinders. The Americans are the favourites to win the whole thing. But Argentina has that never say die attitude. Finally, we have the gold standard, Team USA. They are the defending champions, the number one seeds, and frankly, they're the team everyone else is terrified of. They're led by two of the most consistent players in the world. They've got Coco Gauff at world number 3 and Taylor Fritz, world number 6. Coco Gauff is the United Cup MVP. She went undefeated last year and even took down Iga Swiatek in the final. Taylor Fritz is just as reliable. He's a hardcore specialist who thrives in the Australian heat. They have the best singles duo in the competition, and their mixed doubles chemistry is electric. For the USA, anything less than a trophy is an underperformance. It's a big call, but you've got to back it up. So we've got Taylor Fritz taking on Sebastian Baez. If you're Baez, you probably see Fritz in your nightmares. They've played 5 times and Fritz has won all 5. In fact, Baez has only ever taken 1 set off him. Fritz is 6'5" and he hits a flat, penetrating ball. Baez is 5'7" and wants to turn this into a clay court grind. On a hard court in Perth, Fritz's serve is going to be flying. Baez, I just don't see him having the height or the reach to neutralize Taylor's first serve. So history will repeat itself here. Fritz in straight sets. But I'm going to throw in a 7-5 or a 7-6 as well. I expect there to be a 7 there in there somewhere going for the way for Fritz. And finally, the world number 3, Coco Gauff against a 21-year-old Solana Sierra. This is a huge welcome to the big leagues moment for Sierra. She's a great prospect, ranked number 66. Coco went 5-love in singles at the United Cup last year. She owns this format. She's faster, stronger, and more experienced. Sierra is a clean ball striker, but she's never faced the kind of defensive wall that Coco builds. The call, Coco is going to be too athletic for the young Argentine. It'll be a good experience for Sierra. Gauff wins this comfortably. So, what do you guys think? Can Casper Ruud play the villain and beat the Aussie on his local home turf? Or more importantly, will the new Septon ring be on show? Let me know on X at Talkn Tennis. That's a wrap for our Day 2 preview. I'll be back tomorrow to unpack Day 3. Until then, enjoy the tennis and we'll talk tomorrow.